sometimes when a situation's unfolding, I turn my attention to it even slightly. It seems that my attention to it seems to just kill the situation and it turns out completely different. But I don't feel that my attention to it is introducing resistance. I was wondering what...
Well, it depends on where it is. Every subject is really two subjects. It's leaning toward who you really are or away from who you really are. And so if it's something that when you observed it, because it's not really happening in your world per se, because you've got a strong point of attraction, it's just something and you're out there and you're observant, and you're observant, and so you get a whiff of it. And then as you turn your positive attention, you clean it up in the moment because you're already leaning that way. Well, that's an effective way of doing it. In the early days, we called that pivoting. In other words, just thinking about what you do want rather than about what you don't want. But should you get hold of something that has some more heavy-duty, core, resistant issues in it, when you attempt to do that, you won't be able to do that. So where does that leave you? Well, we want you to say is just leave it. Just leave it. In other words, what we're really emphasizing in these days, especially with you here and the vibration that we feel, the best way to keep your vibration in the least resistant, highest resonant, in vibrational accord with who you really are, is to just leave the stuff that isn't working out and focus on the stuff that is working. And because in time, if that is your determination, the stuff that isn't working has to start working or go completely away. It's dealing with issues that hold you outside the vortex. What would you say your tendency is personality-wise now? Not before, but now. Do you think you're more likely to take the bull by the horns and wrestle it to the ground and solve the problem? Or are you more willing to just let it go and focus upon something that is already working? What feels...
Bit of both, because if there's a subject that's not pleasing, I will do the processes and I will make... That's really become a prominent thing for me. It's not about the money necessarily or the people. I will work and work and work to feel good. And now, no matter what is, I feel good about it and I am seeing the manifestation of results.
And so we say to you, good for you, because you have a powerful mind and you're willing to focus, and because you have tasted enough alignment that you're willing to do that. But even though we wrote the processes, and even though we wrote them for that very reason, we still want to say to you, it's sort of kind of the hard way of going about it. There's an easier way. There's an easier way, and the easier way is find your way into the vortex somehow and then approach it, and it has to move. Here's the distinction that we're making. So let's say you're outside the vortex, some issues happened, and you feel the discord of it, and you're determined to get it into a better feeling place. So you do a process and you move it a little, and you do a process and you move it a little, and you do a process and you move it a little, and you do a process and you move it a little more, and you do a process and you move it a little more, and you do a process and you move it a little more, and you do a process and you move it a little more, and you do a process and you move it a little more, and you do a process and you move it a little more, and now you're in the city of hope. The vortex takes you in. You say, good job. I did good job. And you did. Now consider this. So there's this issue that's bothering you, and you do your best to ignore it because it bothers you. Children have this one down really good. It's bothering you, so you do your best to ignore it, but you don't ignore it by just ignoring it, because that's not possible. You can't just make your brain seize up and cease to focus. You ignore it by finding something that you would prefer to think about, not on that subject, because that subject you can only move a little bit, but there are other subjects that you can easily move into the vortex about. Esther has 5 or 6 of them that get her in surefire every single time. The treehouse is one, just thinking about being there, and several others. So as you find something that takes you into the vortex, now you've moved into the vortex, and now as you are recognizing that you're in the vortex, you feel better. Now just milk it. Just acknowledge that this was your intention and do whatever you can to stay there. Now you're in the vortex. Now you're in this vortex, but this issue still looms. So now you focus on the issue and the vortex spits you out. Ignore it again. Just find any reason to get back into the vortex. Focus on things that make it easy for you to stay there. Focus on that issue. The vortex may spit you out again. But you want to be in the vortex, so you find some reason to get in there. Now you're back in the vortex. Now you focus on that issue again. And this time, the vortex doesn't spit you out because your stability, because who you are, gives you the ability to see that formerly outside the vortex in a newer, clearer way. It's easier. Think about the difference between allowing and making something happen, or the difference between inspiration and motivation. So our new mantra is get in the vortex and then anything else you have time for. Get in the vortex and then anything else you have time for. Get in the vortex and then anything else you have time for. Which means leave all the issues. If your children come to you with problems, or your lovers come to you with problems, or your co-workers come to you with problems, or your employer comes to you with problems, as they come to you with a problem, your mindset has to be later gator. Whether you say it out loud to them or not. In other words, that can wait, that can wait, that can wait. And your attitude is, let me get in the vortex and then I'll approach it. Let me get in the vortex and then I'll approach it. Never, ever, ever let something get you out of the vortex. Haven't you noticed? Something can happen. Jerry and Esther have noticed this. In fact, Jerry offered a sort of decree in their household, which the household moves from hotel to hotel, that said no email till after lunch. Because he noticed again and again, Esther would open her email and then it would be a flurry of things she felt like she needed to deal with that kept her from having the joyful morning that he thought she should have. Now what they've discovered is that they will just bask themselves to sleep and meditate first thing in the morning, that inside the vortex no email is strong enough to jerk them out except that one rascal on Wikipedia, whoever he is. Some aberration to the laws of the universe. Cannot find a pesticide strong enough. So, get in the vortex and then anything else you have time.